Hi everybody, it's Anne with Art on the Creek. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you've joined me today. We're going to replace our 5-minute funs for a few weeks with some introductory watercolor lessons. Here's where we're headed. Are you ready? Let's go. This is the first lesson in our new series of getting started in watercolor. I have a list of supplies that I'm going to put in the description down below. If you just click on more, I will provide links to everything I'm recommending. You don't have to use exactly those products, but those are the ones that, frankly, that I started out with, and I found it to be a good lead into success. I don't get any kickback from them. I'm not sponsored by anyone or supported by anyone. What I recommend is the Winsor Newton Cotman student line of their set of 12. Now the Cotman is their student line. It's a studio line. It is a really great brand and it's a wonderful place to start. So that will be a good thing to have in your arsenal. The other thing I'm recommending is the Princeton snap brushes. These are not, this one is Princeton, but it's from a different line than their snap. But in your Princeton snap set that I recommend, you will get a 3/4 inch flat, a number 4 round, and a number 6 round. Now that's what I have here. The reason that we're starting off with the Princeton snap line of brushes is because they have synthetic fibers, and that's a really great place to start when you're first learning watercolor. And you'll get good feedback from the brush, and you'll really get to know the brush techniques very easily that way. And these are just some great basic sizes to start out with. Because the size of paper we're starting with is this. Now these come in a 2-pack, and they're black cover or white cover. I just happen to get the set with the white covers. I like this size because it's easy to frame or mail as a postcard. I've got this taped off, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but this is a watercolor block. This is Paul Rubens cold pressed. It refers to the technique and how the paper is made. What you want to look for in a paper is 100% cotton. I would recommend something that's at least partially cotton. It's a block, which means, I think you can see here that it is adhered with this adhesive, and there's a little gap here that you stick a tool in and go around. You can use a butter knife or some kind of a bone folder or something. And it's very portable. You'll also need a pencil. I just use your basic Clic pencil. You'll want a good eraser, and I recommend either one of these Hi Polymer Erasers. This is a Pentel brand. I think they come out in other brands. It's like a vinyl eraser, and the reason for that is it won't leave smudge marks all over your work. Or definitely, if you would like to get one, I recommend one of these kneadable erasers. This one is a Prismacolor, and they come in packaging like this. I'll put a little photo up there so you can see what to look for. They're like a little slab, and when you get it, you just start working it like this. And these are pretty advantageous to have. You'll see me use it today, and I'll explain it at that time. Another thing that you might want to have is some of this washi tape or painter's tape, and that will help give you a nice border here. Sometimes it just makes it a little bit easier so you don't feel like you have to go all the way to the edge. And then when you remove the tape, you get a really nice crisp white border, which is just an automatic frame of your paper. Another thing that's optional that I have is a fine liner. Now this you can use, this is the one I have right now. It's a brush tip. I've got literally probably thousands of them, but this is the one I just grabbed today. The ink is not permanent, so if you wanted to add some lines to your work when we're done, you can do that. So I'm just going to have this here as an option today. So the picture I've chosen for us today is from a site called Pixabay. Everything on that site is licensed for free use. Now, if you're going to paint something that's already been painted or is definitely from a Google search that you found and you really like it, that's great. Just remember that you won't be able to sell that unless you have permission from the original source. Let's draw our lemon. Now, in the photo, the lemon is just vertical. I'm going to turn my paper at about a 45-degree angle. I'm facing right here, so it's going to be about like this. Because when you're laying things out, it's a little bit more pleasing to look at if things are at an angle. So let's start by drawing our lemon. It's got kind of this funky top here. It's a little bit domed. I'll zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. And then it's just kind of a bulbous shape. It doesn't have to look exactly like the lemon that we're painting. So just a basic shape like this. And our little lemon does come to a point down here. And then it has this shaded area here because we are looking up at this lemon. And we're also going to note that it's a little bit more shaded on this side because our light source is coming in from this way, a little bit towards the front. So we've actually got a big highlight right here. So very lightly, let's just kind of mark those areas. So when you're drawing for watercolor, sometimes it looks like a paint by number drawing. Though that's beneficial, don't discount that. So let's see here then. The lemon has to attach to the tree with a stem, and it looks like this lemon stem comes up here and then just stops. So I think what it's doing is it's bending back to that branch. So the reason I chose this one is because it has a lot of leaves. So let's just pretend that our branch is going to go this way. So I've just got my hand set back, I'm bracing my wrist here, and I'm holding the pencil back with the end of the pencil in this web of my hand here so that I'm going to use my wrist motion to make this arc, this curve. And we're just going to make a very simple little branch like so. Now, as you look up above the lemon on the little branch that comes down, you'll see that an actual branch has some shape to it. So we're just going to add some of those little bumps and grooves here on this branch. And I'm just being a little bit shaky with my line. And then what we can do, I'm going to put a line here because I think what I'll do right here is I'll have a leaf come out. Okay, now we'll zoom back in. And right about here, there's a leaf here like so. It has a bump here. I've got this little portion of the leaves here sped up on double speed, but basically you're just going to draw 3 leaves in. I've got a smallish one to the right, kind of pointed down there. And then this one on the left is kind of tucked behind the branch a little bit. You don't have to do that. You could keep it all the way below the branch. But I did tuck mine behind the branch. And then it has a bit of a wavy texture at the tip. And then for our third leaf, all we're going to do is have it kind of pointing up and to the right. That's the center line of the leaf right there. And then here is the right edge of it, and now the left edge. All right, so that is it. That is all we have for our drawing, and that is all we need. Let me show you what the kneaded eraser can accomplish for you. Now, these lines, you can leave them dark. That's fine. But I want to show you what a kneaded eraser can do. Now, by kneading it like this, you're going to be cleaning the eraser, getting it really soft, getting it pliable, getting it ready to use. And then I'm just going to roll it into kind of a little sausage shape. And see all these dark lines right here? Watch what happens when I roll my kneaded eraser over those lines. They're still there. I can see them, but they're very faint so that we don't have to worry about them showing up through the art. Now, if you like pencil lines, and really they're really hard to see when you're done, you don't have to go through that step, but I wanted to show you that possibility in case you did decide to get a kneaded eraser. All right, so now we're gonna start with our 3/4 inch flat brush, and you're going to paint the background. We're gonna work in sections because we don't want our paper to get too dry. So let's just do this section here. Now with a flat brush, it's so nice because you can get into these little points very easily with the tip or the corner of the brush there. I'm just going to do this section first. Now, how much water should you put on your paper? Well, you want to be able to see a sheen. And the sheen should be even throughout. So in your Winsor Newton Cotman set, you have a Prussian blue. That's what we're going to use in the background here. So you get your brush wet, and then we're going to dip it into our Prussian blue. And you're going to want to create a puddle of that because we will use this. Get a little more water here. We're going to use this for the background. That's about the texture of whole milk. So I'm going to add some water to it and just make it more like skim milk. There we go. Now I've got some of that pigment on my brush, and I'm going to do what's called wet in wet. This is where I'm just going to lay some of this color down, not really being too careful. There we go. That's all we need for that section. Now we're going to continue this blue around, so you don't have to have a totally clean brush. But let's go ahead and paint this like so, and we'll add in more pigment. So with a paper towel, you're just going to want to fold it like so, and then tip up your drawing, and you can see this bead of paint along here. Just run the folded paper towel just on the edge, and you see how that sops that up so quickly? You're not really getting on the paper at all. You're just using that paper towel edge there to collect that excess water. Now, before we go any further, let's play a little bit in this paint, in this puddle of paint over here that we've made. Just put some more down. Try strengthening the pigment. And just get that really dark. It doesn't have to be solid. In fact, we want it to be a little bit variegated. Okay, now I am going to switch to my number 6 because we've got some detail places we need to get in here. Let's do this section. Now right in here, we want to be careful to leave space for that stem. So I'm just very carefully going around and putting the water only where I want the paint to go. So in that little narrow stem space there, you can see there's no water there, so no pigment went in between to join those two blue sections together. Now we're going over here on this side and creating a little wet area so that we can drop in some more pigment. This is just one of the funnest things about watercolor, that you can just drop this pigment in wet on wet and watch the paint flow, let it blend, let the paint do what it wants to do. Now let's play with some really fun techniques. I want to make sure that I have fairly clean water to do this. Let's splatter some water in here. Now I just have a very wet brush. I pick it up so that there is water hanging off of it. You see those droplets? And we're just going to splatter into that background. Can you see that effect that we get there? I know you're getting a glare. Let me pick it up and show you. There. It almost makes like a tie-dye pattern. And I've got a lot of water sitting on here. You can tip it and turn it and let it go to see what will happen. If you have a hairdryer, do it on the lowest setting. This is specifically made for this purpose. It's called a heat tool. And I will link to this as well if you decide you want to get one, but this will help speed up your process so you don't always have to wait in between steps for it to dry. So let me go ahead and do this and I'll be right back. All right, once your painting is completely dry, you will notice that there has been a color shift. Watercolor does dry a few shades lighter than when you started initially. So that is just something to keep in mind. Now let's do our lemon. We're gonna go ahead and start with our lemon yellow. And this time, there you go, you can see what I've got going here. I'm gonna go right into this lemon yellow palette, get a good amount of pigment on my brush, and just create a little puddle of it over here. But let me add some water to that. There we go. I would say that's probably the consistency of maybe somewhere between 2% milk, half and half, something like that. And now let's go ahead and paint our lemon. This is the fun part. Now don't worry if your line here is kind of rough and bumpy. Nothing in nature is perfectly smooth, and this is certainly going to be a lovely fruit. And if you got little bits in here, don't worry about it. We can just shade that in. And yes, it's mixing green, which is fine, because this lemon may not be fully ripe on that side. That's why I wanted to choose blue for our background, to help us correct these happy accidents, as Bob Ross always loved to say. And remember, our light is coming from the side, so that would also make sense that the lemon wouldn't be as ripe on that side. Now, next to my yellow over here on my palette, I'm going to grab some of that Prussian blue again. And I'm going to make a green with those two. And this rich green is going to be our leaves for now. So this will be the lightest shade of the green that we've used for our leaves. So we've got one leaf here, one here. And this part I've got sped up again. We're just repeating that same shade of green on that leaf in the upper right corner, just filling that in and making sure that we do a nice even glaze so that we don't have brush marks showing. Now, before we do this leaf, I want to wait and make sure the lemon is completely dry. So let me rinse off my brush. Let's get a little bit more of this lemon yellow over here on our palette. And I'm going to mix in more Prussian blue to make a darker green. There we go. This is the green I'm looking for now. Now these leaves are still damp, which is great. Very lightly now, I'm going to come in with just the tip of the brush. We're going to use that point and come in here and get the center vein, very lightly placing these other veins on the leaf. And I'm also going to go around this edge here. And then on this leaf down here, since it's still damp, we'll do this top side in a green, in the darker green. The whole half of the leaf. And we'll just do one little line down here in this darker color. Now I'm going to rinse off my brush. Now it's just got water on it. Let's pull some of this darker pigment into this leaf here. And what I'm doing is I'm just touching the darker lines of pigment with a wet brush. You want to get your brush wet and then wipe off the excess water. And then I'm just kind of pulling that around. And this will create a nice variegation on the leaf. You'll still be able to see those vein lines, but you're using the pigment that is already there just to give it some nice texture. And if you lose your vein lines, don't worry about it. We're going to go back and do more. Now, yep, the lemon has dried nicely. We're going to go in with that dark green on our palette. And let's see if I remember. This leaf kind of went behind our branch. And on this largest leaf in the back, we're just repeating that process again one more time, taking that pigment around the edges and pulling it through in a real even manner just to make sure that we're blending and pulling the pigment around to give us a nice smooth edge as well as a good even glaze. Now for this leaf, I want to make sure that I've got some wet pigment here. Because what I'm going to do is going to be kind of fun. I'm going to drop in some straight lemon yellow. Get some of that from my palette. And let's just drop it in up here. Kind of spreading it a little. Go get some more. And we'll charge in with this yellow. Just kind of spread that around like so. And now from the other end, I'm going to get some straight Prussian blue and charge in with that. You want to make sure that the consistencies of the paint and the amount of water is about equal. Watercolor likes to go where the water is, so we want this to be just about equal. A little bit darker toward the lemon. We're coming in with this blue and letting those colors just mix on their own. It really does create a pretty neat effect. There you go. Now I think you can see it. All right, now let's turn our painting right ways again. Make sure that this looks okay right here. There we go. We'll zoom out. Now, often when you're working in watercolor, you'll notice that the piece that you worked on prior to the one you just finished has now faded and it's a little bit lighter. So let's go ahead and use some of that darker green and punch up that leaf up there. I'm just going over very roughly what we did before with the outline and the veins in the leaf, and I'm using that darker mix of green. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and punch up this smaller leaf down there so that it all has an overall even kind of a feel in value. And now we'll go ahead and dry our painting one more time. Now so far we've only used two colors. We've just used blue and yellow. Let's add some more yellow into this. We'll start a new pile over here, new mixing space, with some lemon yellow again. And I want to add just a tiny, tiny bit of cadmium red. Not enough to make orange, but I just want to warm that yellow up. So it's a very, very pale orange that we're dealing with here. And now if we look at our lemon, we've got that lightest portion up here that's a highlight. Let's add this darker yellow down here. Now it's going to look orange at first, but don't worry, when we're all done, it will look lemon. And I want you to go with a very fine line near the leaf there. And then we're just glazing over the whole lemon with this darker shade. Now our lemon is wet again. So what we're going to do with the same mix of paint over here, I'll make just a little bit more of it. We've got the lemon yellow with just a dot of the cadmium red in. Go over that one more time. Make sure we've got a good amount of pigment there. And now I'm going to come in with just some lemon yellow here and kind of agitate that pigment to get that the hard line to go away. There we go. All right, now you see these little speckles that are developing down here? That's wonderful. That's just what we want because the lemon has nicely speckled skin. We've got this light orange over here. I'm going to pick up a touch of that green that we used in the leaves and mix that in down here. We add a touch of red. This is what we're going with here. A little bit of blue and a touch more red. There we go. Now it's shifted over to brown because we've got red, yellow, and blue mixed together, and that's exactly what I want for the shadow bits on the lemon. Now I've got this is about the consistency of 2% milk, and I'm just going to dot some in down here at the bottom and here as well. That's that portion where we're looking up at the lemon. And then let's just create some little spots here. Mixing down with that green that we had before. All right, and now that's to that same brown mix we have, we're going to add just a touch more Prussian blue. Bring it up into a shadowy gray mixture. It's kind of a warm gray, a bluish green gray. Drop some of that in under here. That's that curve where we had the dark shadowy spot. And we can put this along the bottom as well. Rinse my brush, blot it off, and just pull this pigment around to soften that edge. And if you want, you can go in and add some more yellow to that, just to really give it that natural looking. All right, there's our lemon. We're going to let that dry for a while. I'm going to go back in with that Prussian blue and get a good puddle of that going. And let's go into that cadmium red now and just mix a really dark purple. And now to that, I'm going to add just a touch of this yellow so that we've got a very dark olivey green. Do you see that? That's what we're going to start with our branch. So I'm coming in now from the top end and just painting this branch like so. With this olivey green, what you want to do is go down the length of the branch, but don't go edge to edge. We want to leave some white space because what we're going to do in a minute here is spread that pigment to give the branch dimension and have a 3D look. Okay, now that we've still got this white space, what we're going to do is take a wet brush that we've blotted off and just fill that area in with water so that the pigment will travel and be lighter in places. And that will help us establish the light shining on the branch. Now I'm going to take some more of that cadmium red and mix it in with that green that we made. And this should give us a good brown. That's a little bit red. Let me get a little more blue going there. There we go. That's a good dark brownish black. Good thick mixture. That's about the thickness of heavy cream. And we're going to go back in now and do the same thing with the branch. Now this time I'm going on the bottom side up here. I went through that a little bit quickly last time, so I'll show you right about midway through this leaf directly over the lemon. I'm switching to the top portion of the branch. And now the bottom of this stem. And I'll make a little connection there for the lemon. Staying on the bottom of the stem here. And then switching over to the top on this side. Now I'm going to get my brush wet, blot it off, and spread that pigment. And to do that, you can see all I do is have a wet brush, blot it off, and I touch the pigment and bring it to the end of the branch, the other side of the branch there. And you can see that gives you a pretty good looking branch. We have a little tiny dot down here where the flower would have been. And you know what? Let's switch to our number 4 brush for this. Why don't we? Get it wet first and go into that very dark gray pigment that we made. So now we're using our number 4. We've got that dot on the bottom, and then this shadow line is going to come up this way. kind of like a backwards C shape. And there's some little dots in here. And then we move that leaf to the back so we don't have to deal with that shadow. There might be a shadow here from this leaf, so we can add a little line here. And then let's do something here at the top as well, just for fun. Now I've got my brush rinsed and I blotted it off. And I'm just going to disturb that pigment so I don't have hard lines. So just with a wet brush, I'm going in and finessing these details. And then down here, what I want to do, since that just ended up looking like a little bit of a rotten lemon, we're going to take some yellow, some lemon yellow, and just add to that just a touch. There, that helps spread that out a little. Now, one last trick I want to show you, if you wanted to add a highlight. Hang on, I've got to blend that just a little bit. I want to make this a little bit lighter right here. So what I'm going to do is to take my number 6 round again and get it wet just with water, blot it off, and I'm going to lift up. And how that's done is you're just pressing kind of hard and just agitating that pigment. And once it's wet again, then you can take a paper towel and lift that out. So there you can see there we've got more of a highlight in, and now you can go back and finesse that edge a little so it's not so hard. Put some little dots of yellow in there to simulate the lemon skin. And my friends, we are just about done. Let me get this dry one more time. Alrighty, now you could call it done here and go ahead and be finished, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this ink pen. I think what I'm going to do is do a little bit of outlining here, just to show you how you can do some ink and wash. Now, I'm not being completely smooth on this lemon skin, because lemon skins aren't smooth like a peach. They are a little bit bumpy. Now again, this is totally optional. You don't have to do this step. But sometimes I really like adding the boldness of the ink onto the wash, and it just really gives it a nice, almost a wood carving kind of a feel, especially with this particular pen. There are a lot of fine liners out there that you can buy. This one is water soluble, and it does have a brush tip, which I really like because it allows me to vary the width of the line. You can get fine liners that are permanent, and then you could do your inking first and then paint over it, and it won't disturb that ink. Just make sure that your ink lines are dry before you add your watercolor. If you wanted to do that way with a water-soluble ink pen, you could do that at first, and it will add a shadow technique to what you're working on. But here you can see we can just go in with some real vibrant lines and just give it a real nice illustrative feel. We're going to very carefully take our tape off. Now, when you do this, you want to fold it down at an angle perpendicular to where you put it and pull towards you very slowly. If at all you ever see the paper coming off on your tape, you want to stop what you're doing and apply heat to it, and that will help. Let me show you how that's done. It does make for really easy removal. Always sign your work. Be proud of what you've done. It never has to be perfect. I do like to date what I do so that I can remember where I was when I did this, and it helps me judge my progress because everything you paint is a learning experience. So this one for me is going to be January of 23. And there you go. There's our lemon painting. Let me show you real quick how to take this out of your block. Well, let me use a butter knife because I do have one down here randomly. And I want to show you how to do this because most of you will have a butter knife at home. This one happens to be serrated, so you don't want to put that end in first, but this blunt edge, you just want to separate these pages until you see you've got only one. And then you very carefully want to just cut that adhesive like so. I'm using the top edge of the knife so that I don't damage anything. You just run it around. There's your beautiful lemon. Be proud of yourselves. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you'll tune in next week and we'll learn some new techniques and reinforce these as well. All right, guys, have a great week.